Look at your hand. Between the thumb and the forefinger, there's a twitch, a nervous micro-oscillation of muscle. It's the same twitch a gazelle has when it senses a leopard in the tall grass. It's the pre-flight response. Your nervous system is screaming that you are in danger. But you aren't in the grass. You're in a climate-controlled bedroom, staring at a glass rectangle that tells you you aren't enough. The leopard isn't a predator. It's a notification. It's an algorithm. It's a market value score. We are told we live in the most advanced era of human history. We have mapped the genome, split the atom, and built digital worlds where we can be whoever we want. But look at how we treat each other when the cameras are off. Look at the scripts we follow in our dating apps and our corporate performance reviews. The jungle never ended. It just moved indoors, and it got a faster internet connection. Welcome to the era of the modernized caveman. Today, we are being sold a lie, a toxic mechanical lie that says you are nothing more than a biological robot. They tell us that men are providers to be appraised like cattle, and women are assets to be acquired like real estate. They call it evolutionary psychology, as if our ancestors were cold-blooded accountants sitting in caves with spreadsheets, calculating the ROI of a hug. It's nonsense. It's a spiritual prison. Tonight we go back, not to the caves, but to the moment we decided that a human soul could be quantified. We're going to look at the Great Confinement, the Victorian Workhouses, and the Panopticon, the three pillars of a system designed to make you believe you are a product. Because if they can make you believe you're a product, they can control your price. To understand why you feel like an asset today, we have to look at 1656, Paris, a city overflowing with the unwanted. On a single morning, the King of France signed an edict that changed the definition of humanity forever. It was called the Great Confinement. In a matter of weeks, 1% of the city's population was rounded up and disappeared behind the stone walls of the Hôpital Général. But this wasn't a hospital. It was a factory of order. The people taken weren't just the sick. They were the idlers, the beggars, the dreamers, the men who wouldn't work in the new factories, and the women who didn't fit the social mold. For the first time in history, uselessness was criminalized. The state decided that your right to exist was directly tied to your utility to the crown. This was the birth of the human resource. Inside those walls, they didn't just lock you away, they tried to correct you. They stripped you of your name, gave you a number, and forced you into a cycle of repetitive, meaningless labor. They wanted to see if they could automate a human soul. They were trying to kill the teammate and birth the worker. This is where the modernized caveman script began. It was the moment the elite decided that a person's value was exactly equal to their output. If you had no output, you had no soul. Think about that the next time you feel guilty for resting. Think about that the next time you feel like you aren't providing enough to be worthy of love. You are hearing the echoes of 1656. You are hearing the heavy iron doors of the Hôpital Général slamming shut on the idea of intrinsic human value. The Great Confinement never ended. We just traded the stone walls for digital boundaries. We still round up the unproductive in our minds and cast them into the darkness of low value. Fast forward to 1834. The experiment scales up, the British Victorian Workhouse, a machine designed to be so horrific that the poor would rather die in the gutters than seek help. The new poor law was based on a terrifying principle called less eligibility. The goal was to ensure that being a human was a status you had to earn through grueling, soul-crushing labor. If you couldn't pay your way, you were stripped of your humanity. Imagine the smell, the stench of lye, unwashed bodies, and the metallic tang of fear. Families were systematically destroyed. When you entered, you were separated from your wife, your children, your brothers. This was intentional. The system knew that as long as you had a teammate, you had strength. As long as you were loved for who you were, you couldn't be controlled by what you did. To make a biological robot, you first have to make a man lonely. They force men to pick oakum, to sit in rows in absolute silence for 12 hours a day, pulling apart old, tar-soaked naval ropes. The tar would get under your fingernails until they bled. The dust would fill your lungs. It was labor without purpose. It was training to be a machine. They were teaching the modernized caveman that his only friend was the production line. This is the blueprint for the modern grind. The idea that your suffering is a badge of honor, and that your loneliness is just a necessary sacrifice for your market value. The Victorian Workhouse taught us that we are alone, that we are units, and that our only value is our utility to the master of the house. But how do you keep a human being in a cage without bars? You use the Panopticon. Jeremy Bentham's perfect prison design, a circular building with a single tower in the center. The prisoners could be watched at any moment, but they could never see the guard. They never knew when the eye was on them. Eventually, you don't even need the guard. The prisoners start to police themselves. They start to perform. They start to follow the script because they're terrified of being caught in a moment of unutility. This is exactly what social media has done to our relationships. We are living in a global panopticon. We don't act like humans anymore. We act like performers. We curate our lives, our bodies, and our thoughts to please an invisible observer, the algorithm. We are trying to prove to the tower that we are high value. We've become our own wardens. We check our market value every 15 minutes. We look at our likes, our views, and our matches as if they were a parole board deciding if we're allowed to exist. In the Victorian workhouses, they had the silent system. You weren't allowed to speak. Today we have the screaming system. You are forced to speak, but only in the script they've written for you. If you don't follow the high-value script, you are shamed. If you don't provide enough, you are invisible. We are policing our own hearts, making sure we don't accidentally show a glimpse of our true, unoptimized, unproductive selves. We have become inmates of our own status. This brings us to the modernized caveman himself, the person who has learned to love his cage. There's a movement that tells men their only value is their bank account, and tells women their only value is their youth. They use words like sexual market value, as if we were stocks to be traded on the NASDAQ. They talk about optimizing attraction as if it were a software update. This is the ultimate propaganda of the workhouse. It's the lie that says love is a transaction. It's the belief that you have to buy your way out of loneliness. If you believe that no one can love you for who you are, but only for what you provide, then you are living in the silent system. You are picking oakum in your own mind, hoping that if your fingers bleed enough, someone will finally tell you that you're allowed to stay. Why do we believe this? Because we are terrified. We are terrified that if we aren't useful, we will be cast back into the Great Confinement. We are terrified that we are just biological robots with a glitch. The glitch of needing to be loved. But that glitch is the only thing that makes us human. Our ancestors didn't survive the Ice Age because they were high-value providers looking for assets. They survived because they were teams. They survived because they cared for the sick. They shared the meat, and they held each other in the dark when the wolves were howling. If they had been transactional, we wouldn't be here. We would have optimized ourselves into extinction. So, how do we break the script? First, we have to recognize the modernized caveman for what he is, a coward's mask. It takes no courage to be transactional. It takes no soul to treat a relationship like a business deal. That's easy. It's a defense mechanism. If you treat people like products, you don't have to be vulnerable. You don't have to face the terrifying reality that another human being might actually love you for who you are and not what you provide. But there is another way, a way that requires actual strength. There are spaces in this world, real and imagined, where the workhouse logic is being dismantled. Places where the safety net isn't just a political policy, but a cultural soul, where the radical idea that every human being has intrinsic value is the foundation of every interaction. When you take the survival pressure off the table, the jungle disappears. When you stop treating humans like units for the workhouse, they start to bloom. They move from the transactional to the teammate. They start to believe that they are worth more than their bank account. You are living in a world that wants to treat you like a line on a spreadsheet. They want you to believe that you are alone and that your only hope is to outcompete your neighbor. They want you to stay in the Panopticon, polishing your profile while your heart starves. But I'm telling you, the script is fake. The Panopticon is empty. There is no guard in the tower. There is only you and the person standing next to you. You are a human being, not an asset, not a provider, a human being. And the moment you find another person who sees that, who values the teammate over the transaction, the workhouse walls crumble. The modernized caveman stays in the cave because he's afraid of the light. He's afraid that if he steps out without his resources, he'll be nothing. But he's wrong. He is everything. Don't follow the script. Build the tribe. Value the human over the product. Because in the end, the only thing that survives the jungle is the person who refused to live by its rules. Outer Enigma.